Alright, like today we're going to reflect on the Isatta Sutta, which is the discourse on archers, as 3.24, found, that is translated in SD 44.18. And it's a short sutta, quite a straightforward sutta. It's actually a dialogue between King Pasenadi of Kosala and the Buddha. The king asked the Buddha a question about where should one give gifts, and then the conversation builds up from there, with the Buddha going on to a bigger subject than giving. So this sutta is interesting in its own way. I will comment on the sutta after we've looked through it first. Okay, so let's look at the sutta. The translation is on page 176. The discourse on archery. As 3.24. Originating in Savatthi, staying thus at one side, Pasenadi, the Raja of Kosala, said this to the Blessed One: "Where, Bhante, should one give gifts?" Now look at the question again. It's no ordinary question. Here the king asks where. It doesn't say who. Okay, it says where should one give gifts. So it's talking about a situation here rather than just people, if you like. Then the Buddha replies and says, "Maharaja, wherever the heart has faith." So the Buddha has given a very general answer. People give after faith. Of course, in Buddhism, giving is a very important teaching. There's a lot of things the Buddha has taught about giving, dana. But here, the Buddha gives a very simple, very general answer, saying that where the heart has faith. So here the basic idea is that when something is given in a proper way, it should be given with faith. With faith here meaning we see something good in the other person, and we give happily, and the gift itself is we call it proper. Okay, so in other words, all the three conditions are complete, and that kind of giving is we call it wholesome, meritorious, and so on. But this sutta is more about just giving, as we will notice. Anyway, the conversation continues. "But where, Bhante," so now that the king is asking again, "but where, Bhante, does giving have great fruit?" Right? Where do we get great benefit, good karma? "Now, Maharaja, where should one give gifts is one thing, but where does giving have great fruit is another." So there are two separate questions, right? Then the Buddha continues and says, "Maharaja, what is given to the morally virtuous is of great fruit, not what is given to the immoral." So here I was talking about who is really worthy of gifts. These are two people who keep the precepts, basically, or in other words, the body and speech are wholesome, harmonious, at peace with themselves, not hurting anyone. And better still, these are the wise teachers. They are at peace with themselves, and they have renounced the world. Later on we will see who this person is at the end of the sutta. The Buddha continues, it says, "Now then, Maharaja, here I will ask you in return about just this matter. Answer as you see fit." So here again we see the Buddha using what we today, what in the West is called the Socratic method. The Buddha asks a counter question. This is significant in the sense that what the Buddha is implying is that the king knows the answer to such questions, or maybe he's not aware that he knows the answer, and he just needs to be shown how to answer such a question, in other words. So this is a very important way of learning in Buddhism, where the teacher will often encourage the student to try to answer the question himself, because he is able to do so, he has the wisdom. It's just a matter of putting things together, so to speak. Alright, so what the Buddha does here is, he gives parables. What do you think, Maharaja? Suppose you were at war here, and you are arrayed for battle. The king often goes to war, so this is a very familiar kind of figure. So the Buddha says, Your Majesty, imagine you're preparing for war. Then there comes along a Kshatriya boy, it is a boy of the warrior class or noble class, untrained, unskilled, unpracticed, undrilled, timid, trembling, terrified, ready to flee. So you're a very timid person, timid boy here. Okay. Now here, if you look at this passage again, lots of repetitions. So we see, because we today we are trained in what's called the scribal tradition. We read rather than listen. But there were for many centuries, for more than 1,000 years, these discourses were all memorized and they were recited, and the monks and nuns would listen to them. So these repetitions are important, because if you miss a few words, then you just catch one word and more or less you have an idea what the sutta is about. For us, when we read this, it's like a reflection. We see the words flowing one to another with similar meanings or even the same meaning. So basically here the Buddha is talking, okay, Your Majesty, you have this young boy with you and you're going to war, but this young boy, he comes to the warrior class, but he's a timid person. Would you keep that person? Would such a person be of any good to you? So then the king replies, says, No, Bhante. Bhante simply means, Sir, I would not keep that person. Such a person would not be any good to me. Right? The king's going to war with someone who's brave. Okay, so this is the first one. Then the Buddha continues and says, then comes along a Brahmin boy, a boy of the priest class. And this boy too is just like the previous boy, is untrained, is very timid. So the king similarly says, I would not keep such a boy. And then comes the next one. The Buddha says, then comes along a wise boy, a boy of the merchant class. And again, it's the same kind of boy, is timid. So it's of no use to the king, and the king says, well, I will definitely not keep him. Then comes, the Buddha continues and says, then comes along a Shudra boy, a boy of the menial class, the working class, if you like. Again, this boy is just like the rest, is timid. And the king says, well, no, I will not keep such a boy. So in other words here, the drift of this passage is, no matter which of the four main classes in ancient India in the Buddha's time this boy may come from, if he's timid, the king would not keep him, especially in battle. But that is the figure. Okay? Then there is the reverse of the parable, section 9 onwards. What do you think, Maharaja? Suppose you were at war here, and you are arrayed for battle. Then comes along a Kshatriya boy, a boy of the warrior class, trained, skilled, practiced, drilled, fearless, steadfast, brave, not wont to flee. Would you keep such a boy? The Buddha asks. And the king replies, says, yes, I would keep that person, for such a person would be useful for me, right? And then the whole passage repeats the same thing for a Brahmin boy, Vaishya boy, Shudra boy. As long as he's brave, the king says he would keep such a boy. It would be useful to him in battle. Then the Buddha concludes his parable, then he links the parable to his teaching. You can see in section 13, he begins by saying, even so. The moment you see even so, there's a cue telling us the Buddha is going to connect the parable, the worldly aspect that he has given, to the spiritual aspect. Even so, Maharaja, when one has gone forth 1/4 meaning renounce the world, from home into homelessness, no matter from what family. And one has abandoned the 5 factors and accomplished 5 factors. So here we see numbers again, right? Let go of 5, then cultivated 5. What are the 5? What are the 5 factors that are abandoned? So here again, who's the Buddha talking about? He's talking about a renunciant, a monk or a nun. So the 5 factors that are abandoned are: the desire for sensual pleasures has been abandoned, ill will has been abandoned, sloth and torpor has been abandoned, restlessness and remorse has been abandoned, doubt has been abandoned. These are the 5 factors that have been abandoned. If we are familiar with the suttas, we know very well these are the 5 mental hindrances that prevent wisdom from arising. These are the 5 things that hinder us in our meditation. And if we have overcome all these 5 things totally, completely, then we have attained dhyana. That means deep meditation, when the mind is totally free of the body and all the sense activities. The mind is totally at peace with itself, blissful, joyful, very clear, very alert and lucid. So these are the 5 factors that have been abandoned, meaning this renunciant or this monk or nun is able to meditate and attain dhyana. Then the Buddha continues, section 15. What are the 5 factors that are accomplished? Okay, just now it's 5 factors that are abandoned. Now, 5 other factors that are accomplished. He is accomplished in the group of moral virtue of the non-learner. Okay, look at this line. You have the group here, kanda. In other words, it's a collection of practices here. The moral virtue group, if you like, sila kanda. In simple terms, it has to do with all those things to do with moral virtue, the discipline of speech, body and speech. Not of any ordinary person, but here the person is called a non-learner. And who is the non-learner? Who is the learner, first of all? The learner are the 3 kinds of saints. They are the stream winner, the once returner, and the non-returner. They are called learners because they are the saints of the path who really are able to learn, willing to learn, and benefit from the learning. In fact, strictly speaking, if we have not attained at least stream winning in terms of early Buddhism, then we are technically called outsiders, bahira. You know, we're still not part of the community in terms of the Arya Sangha, the noble Sangha, the community of saints. We are still outsiders. But of course, we're approaching the 3 jewels. So here, the learners are the first 3 kinds of saints. The 4th one is the Arhat. The Arhat is fully awakened, just like the Buddha. He doesn't need to become Buddha anymore. He doesn't need to build up anything else, so to speak. He's already awakened. He won't be reborn. No more suffering for him. That's the Arhat. So the Arhat is called a non-learner. So here you are. It's very important to see all these very important teachings in early Buddhism. He's called Aseka, non-learner, no need to learn anymore. So his journey has ended. But you will notice in later Buddhism that developed outside India, new ideas started coming in. The Buddhism kind of adapted itself to local ideas and so on and so forth. Then the people lost touch with the early teachings, and they came up with new ideas and say such things as the Arhat still needs to practice and to attain Buddhahood and so on. These are totally foreign teachings which the Buddha never thought at all. And I have to stress this point. You can see in this sutta the word aseka, meaning non-learner, nothing more to do, nothing more to go, nothing more to practice. He is fully awakened just like the Buddha. So we must be very careful not to entertain this kind of wrong view that Arhats still need to become Buddhas. Okay, so that's the first one. He is accomplished in the group of moral virtue of the non-learner. Number two, he is accomplished in the group of samadhi of the non-learner. So he is also accomplished in terms of mental cultivation, meditation of the Arhat. He is accomplished in the group of wisdom of the non-learner. Right? He has attained insight wisdom of the Arhat, and the understanding of the Four Noble Truths, in other words. He is accomplished in the group of liberation of the non-learner. He's also freed himself from many of the defilements that will bring pain and suffering to any ordinary being. And then finally, number five, he is accomplished in the group of the knowledge and vision of the liberation of the non-learner. Okay, so you have five sets of things. So just look at the keywords. You have moral virtue, samadhi, wisdom, liberation, and the knowledge and vision of liberation. These five are very interesting. They of course refer to the Eightfold Path. You can see moral virtue refers to the first training, right? The training in moral virtue of the Eightfold Path, and then samadhi training, the second group, and then the third training in wisdom. So you have altogether here 8 factors, right? And then you have liberation, that is 9, factor number 9, and then the knowledge and vision of the liberation of the non-learner is number 10. So you have the Eightfold Path, the path factors, 8 path factors, and you have the 10 rightness, the 10 kinds of rightness, sammata. Samma means right, full, complete, S-A-M-M-A, the last A is long, samma. But when you make it an abstract noun, you add T-T-A at the end, sammata. Okay, so rightness. So this is the complete journey of the Arhat. All the 10 rightness are present in him. Okay, so this is what this passage is saying. So these are the 5 factors he is accomplished in. Thus, what is given to those who have abandoned the 5 factors and accomplished 5 factors has great fruit. So here the Buddha says, notice how the Buddha answers. He says, firstly, it tells the king, give where your heart is. But if you ask about who's the best person, right? Theoretically speaking, ideally speaking, that person would be the Arhat, because he's totally awakened, totally purified. Then the sutta closes with 2, 4, 6, 8 verses. Okay, you find that in ancient times, very often when the king is speaking or the speaker is addressing a noble person or this prince is talking, they often speak in verse.
7 verses.
Okay, so there's 7 verses here. Let us go through the verses. An archer strong and vigorous, a youth who was cultivated as such, a king at war would keep him, not one a coward on account of birth. So you see here a summary of the first parable. Thus indeed patience and meekness, who is established in such states, noble in conduct, wise, even of low birth, one should honor. Here the meaning is that spirituality comes above everything else, above the way the world measures people. Someone is good not because of class or how he's born or social status, but through his own spiritual cultivation. One should build delightful hermitages for the deeply learned to live in, and build watersheds in the arid wilds, and passages to rough terrain. Now, of course, if you think of ancient India, the country can be quite wild. There might be stretches of dry places and so on. So the travelers, they walk long journeys in the hot sun and the dust and so on. So even a well by the side, some trees would be really helpful, restful for such people. Food, drinks, victuals, cloths and lodging too. To those who have become upright, one should give with a radiant heart. Right? So the best people to receive gifts, of course, the truly spiritually cultivated people. Just as the thundering clouds, lightning wreathed, 100-crested, fill the plains and valleys full, showering heavily upon the earth. Okay, this is the first part of the poem. It's again a similar parable here. This is a very interesting ancient Indian poetry, lots of imagery. The lightning wreath, this is of course the clouds, okay? The clouds covered in lightning shooting up from the clouds. 100-crested. In other words, you see lots of, if you look at the sky when there's a thunderstorm, when the lightning flashes, you can see the top of the clouds, they look like mountains, the crest. So it's called 100-crested. They fill the plains and valleys full. That was the rain clouds, rain during a thunderstorm. The ancient Indians seem to celebrate this kind of situation. They love the thunder and the rain clouds because they bring water and life. So then the second part of the poem goes, even so, the faithful, the learned, having prepared a meal, satisfies the mendicants who are wise with food and drinks. Rejoicing, he makes gifts be given, saying, give, give. For that's his thunder. So here you see the meaning now changes from physical thunder to what's called a lion roar. Gajita, here meaning spiritually, a spiritual statement that is joyful and courageous. For that's his thunder, just like that of the rains. The floods of merits and torrents will shower upon the giver. So in other words, the benefits of giving. So you see here a kind of combination of teaching on giving as well as the practice of the renunciance. So the idea is to, for us, as we study the sutta, to balance both aspects of this teaching, and to remind us that giving is a very important aspect of Buddhist training, and on the other side, practicing Buddha's teaching to attain the highest is also very important for us. So on that note, we will end this study. And now we'll do a short reflection. This is the last sutta in this volume, and whenever we have a chance to reflect on the sutta, it's like looking through a window into the times of the Buddha, so that we're able to study and listen to what he has taught us. Although we know very well these are not his exact words, they preserve, they point to the spirit of the teachings that he has been giving to those ancient monks and nuns and listeners. And for us to be able to truly understand these teachings, we need to calm our minds in meditation, so that we can see and understand these teachings for ourselves. deep in our own hearts. Reflecting in this way is very wonderful good karma. By the power of such karma, may we be blessed with courage and wisdom to aspire to attain spiritual awakening, at least dream winning in this life itself. In this moment of peace, too, let us send out our loving kindness to all those who have taught us the Dharma, to all the practitioners who preserve the Dharma. And also we send out our loving kindness to all our loved ones, and to others who are still seeking the Dharma, that they may find the true teaching. And finally we send our loving kindness to all the people that we know, or the people that we love and care for, and to all beings. May all beings be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.